Thanks, Frank, and thanks so much to the folks who invited me. It's a real pleasure to be here, and my sister, the other Professor Chin.
The real professor.
For whatever role it was that you had. So I teach at the University of Arizona Law School, and so I'm going to talk about this from at least at the beginning, from a slightly different perspective. I want to talk about what SB 1070 actually is and does. So as you know, SB 1070 is Arizona's new immigration law. It was passed in April of this year, and it was immediately tested in federal court, in the U.S. District Court in Phoenix, where Judge Susan Bolton ordered that various parts of the law not go into effect at this time through a legal device called an injunction. And the state of Arizona has appealed that injunction, and it was argued before the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit a week or 10 days ago. And it indicated that they are, I think, in large agreement with Judge Bolton's ruling, although not necessarily with all of them. So the further background of SB 1070 is that SB 1070 is largely the brainchild of a law professor, Chris Kobach, who's a professor at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and he was just elected Secretary of State of Kansas. And his idea is that states can, through this doctrine, which is out there, it exists, called cooperative enforcement, that states can enact mirror images of federal immigration laws, and that is constitutional, that's legal. And so long as what the states do is a mirror image, a direct copy of federal law, it's acceptable. And this idea has really had remarkable traction in the popular media. Sarah Palin, George Will, Rush Limbaugh, the editorial pages of the Washington Times and New York Post have articulated this idea of what's wrong with helping the federal government enforce their own law. How could that be objectionable? Helping, right? Helping is good, right? That idea has had remarkable traction, and I'll talk about it. But first, let me tell you what SB 1070 does. The big point is Section 1. Which reveals that SB 1070 is designed to generate self-deportation on the part of undocumented workers in the state of Arizona. So Section 1 says, the legislature declares that the intent of this act is to make attrition through enforcement the public policy of all state and local government agencies in Arizona. The provisions of this act are intended to work together to discourage and deter the unlawful entry and presence of aliens and economic activity by persons unlawfully present in the United States. So if you, SB 1070 is 19 pages long, and it is most prominently, it's a mess. It is a badly drafted statute. It is vague, it's inconsistent, it uses different terms to mean the same thing. It uses terms that are not used in any other state or federal law, which makes it hard to figure out what it means. When I first looked at it, I thought that it's a botch job. That it just, but over time, I've come to the conclusion that SB 1070 was intentionally drafted that way. Why? Well, there are 6.6 million people in Arizona, 500,000 undocumented people, 8-9% of the population. It's not realistic. It's not. It can't have been the purpose of the statute that there's going to be 500 additional criminal cases going through the courts in Arizona. That can't be what it's about. It was designed to generate self-deportation, to get people to leave on their own. And so, from that perspective, the vagueness is a virtue, because there's no way, as you read the law, there's no way to comply with it. There's nothing that someone who's undocumented can do to stay within the Arizona law. charge. The only thing that you can do is to not give undocumented people, even if they're your relatives, or they're your parishioners, or they're your patients, or they're your clients. The only thing that you can do is not transport them, not let them into your building, not sell them anything. Any of those things possibly could be, or possibly not, could be a violation of the law. So the safe harbor is don't have anything to do with these people. And so from that perspective, it's a brilliant structured law. The only way to comply is a complete distancing. So how does it send these messages? What does it actually do? The first big feature of SB 1070 is some investigative and reporting requirements. The first thing is that a person is lawfully stopped or detained, and there's reasonable suspicion, which is a legal term meaning a foundation and evidence that warrants further investigation. There's reasonable suspicion that they're undocumented. Then the police have to investigate if practicable. And an Arizona driver's license, a passport, certain other specified forms of identification are presumptive evidence that the person is a citizen. That is to say, they resolve the investigative duty by showing that the person is a citizen, or at least authorized to be in the United States. There's an exception. It's a contingent duty. If it would interfere with an investigation, the police don't have to do it. This part, the judge enjoined. The judge said that did not go into effect. If a person is arrested under SB 1070, in all cases, their citizenship status has to be checked with a certain federal office in Vermont that has a database of everybody who's in the immigration system. Not everybody in the United States, because if you're a U.S. citizen, you're not in this immigration database. But if you're any sort of immigrant or non-immigrant, or you've been deported previously, you're in this database, and everybody has to be checked if they're arrested. The judge enjoined that section, but I think the Ninth Circuit is going to lift that part of the injunction and say that that's okay. If an undocumented person is convicted of a crime or a local offense, then federal authorities have to be notified. So this is designed to increase the number of people who are in the deportation system by saying that not only people convicted of serious crimes have to have their data shared with the immigration authorities, but even if you're convicted of a local offense, city ordinance like having a dog off of a leash, or weed, you let the grass grow too high in front of your house. If you're convicted of that and you're undocumented, your name has to be reported to federal authorities. And that part is in effect. It came into effect and the judge refused to enjoin it. The second big feature of SB 1070 is what I call an anti-boss law. It says that agencies and supervisors in all agencies, not just law enforcement agencies, can't prevent line employees from doing what they want with regard to gathering and reporting immigration information. So the statute actually says that agencies and officials can't restrict enforcement of immigration law to less than the full extent permitted by federal immigration law. Now, I read that as meaning unless the thing is prohibited by federal immigration law, you can't restrict your employees from doing it. So concretely, what that means is certain law enforcement agencies have policies that say you don't investigate the immigration status of victims and witnesses.